Welcome back to this. Now presenting even more this.
It sure is this. I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing in this level right now.
Oh hey, you know what Digibro's conversations often are? Is like we went to a place and did a thing. We should tell that. We went to places, right?
What places did we go to?
Stores.
What
Things to buy
what
stuff at.
stores did we go to?
All sorts over the last 2 months.
Name some.
Let's see. Okay, Farm Fresh is the name of that one grocery
That's
store.
a
right?
grocery store.
Yeah, and like the checkout lines are named after U.S. presidents for some reason.
Yeah.
Remember that?
I do remember that.
And I was like,
never noticed
why
until
is that?
You pointed it out.
Yeah. Why did they do that?
Oh. Here we go. It is a... I don't know why they did that.
Let's see. We also went to, what was that one restaurant that like is right next to that bus station that goes all the way over to Chinatown in New York?
Pho 79?
Yeah.
Yeah, we ate at the pho place.
Wait, which country is that?
Vietnamese.
Right, okay. I didn't want to say, I didn't want to get it wrong. Yeah, Vietnamese. You know, I always thought to myself, there's probably things out there, food out there, that has a totally different taste, completely different, alien from all the components of taste that I know. And they were all in that one meal. I was like, whoa, all this stuff.
You had a sub, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vietnamese subs are very different.
It like sort of tasted like a public bathroom, but like in a good way.
I don't know how you could construe a public bathroom in a good way.
That's something I've been trying to wrap my head around, but it's like there are some times where like things can taste like shit, but like in a good way. Like it has similar properties to the flavor that the smell of poop has. You know, because like I mean, you know, poop and chocolate both have the same color, right? But they're, I don't know, like it can be, that can happen. I don't know. Like, comment, and subscribe if you know what I'm talking about. Or like
Poop
something
and chocolate have the same color.
right. So like certain, but
I'm not sure that's relevant to the argument.
Well, the point is like there's a spectrum of color, right? Similarly, there must be some sort of spectrum of flavor. And there are things that can be on the shit side and things that can be on the tasty side, but can still be similar to one another in certain ways. They can have certain properties that are the same, but just not in a way that makes the other one bad tasting.
I think I understand what you're saying.
Right. And it's mostly like, I guess, the scent of the soap and cleaners they use in public bathrooms that Vietnamese sub reminded me of. We went there, okay. Other places we went. We went to the pagoda. And I was always like, oh hey, what's the pagoda gonna be? And we went there and it's just a pagoda, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's just a pagoda in the middle of Norfolk.
Right.
Where people go to play Pokemon Go.
Right. We passed by so many people walking around, all of them playing Pokemon Go.
I play Pokemon Go.
I just like, there was like an old, sitting at the pagoda, there was an old lady hooked up to oxygen in her nose playing Pokemon. And I'm like, wow.
This is the world we're in.
This is a difference in society right there.
What the fuck is this? What is this? What is this? What does it do? I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. Do I hit? No? Well, oh, maybe,
Digi, thoughts on the fact that, our parents, that we are the last generation who has parents who don't play video games. Like, you know, in the same way, like, now all parents play video games, but not the same kind, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, what do you think about that? Do you have thoughts on that?
I don't know how accurate it is.
Because, like, even my dad still has not gotten into, like, any kind of games. Like, he only wants media to relax, and, like, no video games are relaxing to him.
Both of my parents have played video games. And I mean, my mom plays Facebook games constantly.
Right.
And she's played, like, puzzle games that are similar to Facebook games.
Right. My mom plays, like, Heyday, like, sort of like a farm game, mobile game. And she probably plays video games more than me because of that.
Yeah, I think my mom plays more games than I do.
I know my dad played arcade games back when arcade games were a thing, you know, in the 80s, but like he hasn't since then. And it was just, I felt like cheated out of my money when like my parents didn't get into video games at all with the Wii, because like it was advertised that was going to happen.
Right, yeah.
Okay, basically it was all false advertising. I couldn't jump behind a couch to use as cover in a Metroid game,
No.
like what clearly happened in the trailers, and no old people I knew got into it. Total ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned this before, that my dad did get into a video game at some point in, like, the early 90s, but because it was so, like, it took over his life to such an extent that he is, like, terrified of the idea of getting into games, because he thinks it'll be too addicting.
Yeah,
Reasonable.
fair enough,
He has other shit to do.
Yes.
And I mean, he's way into running and shit, you know, which is
The
probably
most
better
popular
for his-
genre of mobile game right now,
Yeah,
but you can do it in real life.
indeed. How the fuck do I get that? This area is it's a lot going on. I don't know how it can help me. Help me, I'm down about my inside. Do you have any more thoughts on what you were talking about?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the whole kids these days. They stay inside, don't go places. You know, I don't know. I sometimes have to gauge like what is the obviousness level of what I'm about to say, but like, you know, kids aren't really allowed to go around and explore the world as much, so of course they can't. You know, like one time I was talking to this old Irish lady whose windows I was cleaning, and she's like, yeah, you know, I'm not gonna try to do the accent, by the way, but like, you know, my grandniece or whatever, my granddaughter, like, you know, she's 13 and she just doesn't leave the house. And I'm like, well, yeah, you know, I mean, back in the day when you were a kid, like, kids could just like walk around anywhere they wanted in the whole world. And there weren't any pedophiles out there to get them. And she's like, you know, that's a good point. I don't let her leave the yard.
Yeah.
And like, what's really interesting is I think like the big like generational misunderstanding is that a lot of parents are just such bad. No, they're so imperceptive that they don't realize that when you don't let kids wander around very much, you can only wander around the yard, or like on one block. It's not fun to walk around.
Right.
And when I explained that to her, she was like, "Oh yeah." I even used The Legend of Zelda as an example. I was like, "Okay, in video games, there's one series of video games that are like the most popular, or one of the most revered, the most critically acclaimed, that many children have grown up on and loved. And basically, you play a guy who like wears a green tunic and like wanders or rolls around an open field all day. That's basically what you do. You go around and explore outside because kids want to do that. People innately want to do that. They just can't anymore because the world's too dangerous.
Breakable. Okay.
And she was like nodding, like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I always love explaining stuff like that to like old people, you know?
Yeah. It's satisfying when you can make people realize that there's like a good reason for everything. Oh, that was
I
clever.
just love explaining like weird internet things in general to like my parents and stuff, because you know, part of my job is about figuring out what my audience is and what I need to explain to them. So it's interesting as an exercise, if nothing else, to explain things to my parents who are completely divorced from any audience my videos would ever have, right?
Right.
Like one time, I was on DeviantArt, and I saw some like teenage girl who had like a recolor OC of Sonic. It was like some sort of like palette, like add your own colors and stuff to this original design I did, Sonic character.
Right.
And she's like, you know, my character is like, she's a princess and like she's very compassionate to everyone, and she's all about peace and preserving the environment, and she's all about love and stuff. And I'm like, And I was like, I challenged her like beliefs. I was like, what if there were two warring factions and some of them were all dying of starvation and they needed to drain this swamp and kill its inhabitants in order to sustain their lives? What would your princess character do? You know? And I just kept concocting more and more like difficult situations for her to make decisions in. And I thought, you know, this is kind of like funny to me in a way that my parents would appreciate, because they like the idea of liberal hippies being confronted with reality, right?
Right.
So with that relatable fact in mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to now explain this to my parents.
Yeah.
So first I had to like say, okay, you know Sonic the Hedgehog, which that's That's where it ends. That's where the familiarity begins and ends. Like, they know Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm like, okay. Then I had to explain the nature of Sonic in the early 2000s with the Adventure era. Then I had to explain the concept of an OC. And then I had to explain the concept of, like, a self-insert Mary Sue character. And that was... I had to explain all of those things, and it was so much fun to explain all those things I would never have to explain to anyone else.
At what point did your parents check out and stop paying attention to what you were explaining?
That's an interesting thing. Like, I'm pretty sure my dad in particular is always able to, like, understand whatever I'm explaining if I go methodically enough, you know? Because I've had so much experience.
I'm not talking about understanding. I'm talking about giving a shit.
Yeah, they totally, like, my dad, like, was interested in it, like, definitely. Like, I became at some point really good at explaining things in a way that my parents in particular, my dad in particular, will, like, be interested, you know?
Well, it's very easy to get my parents interested. It's hard to
keep them interested.
Keep them interested if it goes on for more than 10 seconds in your explanation. You know, like my dad just has such a hard time continuing to listen.
Yeah, my dad doesn't have a problem with that. But what is interesting is just how little my dad remembers of anything I ever say. That's what always gets me. Like, I'm just used to him not remembering anything I tell him about.
Right.
And I guess
Same
that's
here.
just... You know, my theory is that... Okay, you know how they say first impressions mean everything?
Yeah.
Their first impression of you is you being a baby who can't talk at all.
Right.
And then being a toddler who only says meaningless things. And my theory is that parents just cannot, on some fundamental level, take what their kids say seriously.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
That's my theory, you know? It's like my dad just never developed the ability to remember things I tell him. And that's fair, whatever, you know?
Maybe you're just boring.
Maybe.
Oh my god, am I just gonna ground? Yes! Yes!
I know for a fact I got pretty good at, like, saying things in a way that my dad would be interested. Like, he clearly reacted differently than before I had those skills, you know? I figured out how to be consistently funny. After an entire youth and adolescence of just making jokes constantly, regardless of result, I eventually got a better handle of the situation. I knew how to time myself by listening to stand-up comedy on Spotify constantly.
Yeah, take notes from the pros. That'll get you somewhere. What am I doing? I don't know.
Oh, man.
How?
I deliberately gave myself the tea in the biggest stein possible, in the Einstein stein, so that I wouldn't run out, and I ran out immediately, and already my throat is starting to wane in its endurance.
Well, you've been having to talk constantly for about 3 hours now.
Yes.
That's why I keep a tea on hand.
Yes.
I'm so good at this game.
Yes.
I mean, never mind the consistent failures I've had. Let's just pay attention to when I'm doing okay.
Yeah. You know, when I first heard the fact that it's all about confidence, like particularly with getting women, but just getting anything in life, it's all about confidence, I was like, oh, well then, that basically solves everything. Because all you need is a little bit of confidence, and then knowing that confidence will help you succeed, you've just started a confidence snowball. And I just, like, spent years barely talking to women, but giving myself confidence out of nothing. Being like, yeah, I'm so confident.
I'm really curious if that's good for anything.
And it's not autism because I'm confident that it isn't.
That's my favorite part.
Now, for real though, I have, for like 4 straight years, consistently hung out with 2 friends who are female, who I have not sexual relationships with, so I have talked to women.
Well,
It's true.
talking to women is not the end goal of your confidence, is it?
Yes. And also on the internet, there's been a number of women on the internet who I've talked to, and some of whom I'm pretty dang sure, and some of whom have proven themselves to be actual women. There's a certain writing style that, you know, women typically have. I can sort of sense it.
Yeah.
And now this may be really weird, but I'm starting to realize I think black women I can't tell.
Uh-huh.
Black women write like men. I've just been noticing this from personal experience. So yeah.
How big is your sample pool on that?
2, but I don't know, like it really stuck out to me both times. Like there was a comment on one of my videos that I really thought was like by a dude, but then like she mentioned being a black woman, like because it was related to the topic, and I was like, oh. And like this is just after a couple of weeks ago, talking to another black woman, and it was like who also just really seems like a man. Like there was a person who claimed to be a woman for a long time, then said that he wasn't. I'm like, oh. And like he has certain writing tics that other lady totally did. Nee. Maybe we're all different, and we're not stereotyped. We're not stereotypical, and we can't be divided by race or gender. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. That racism is just a sham.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yep.
I don't know how to follow up any of that story.
Speaking of amazing, what do you think of mazes? I always have loved mazes.
I don't have any particular feelings about them.
Well, by mazes, you know I'm referring to like a generic, just black and white maze, or like a corn maze, you know. I'm talking the idea of a labyrinth.
A labyrinth I am way into.
Yes. We at one point early into like after RadCon was over, you had mentioned that one of your life goals is to make a labyrinth. And I was like, I think we are going to be collaborators for even longer than anyone could expect. Because that has been my life goal forever. Like, if I ever have buttloads of money and I can make myself a bajillion-dollar house, I want it to be a labyrinth. I want it to be a house you can get lost in. And I just don't know why people waste their money on all this fancy furniture and fancy windows. You know, cleaning windows, I went to a lot of really nice houses, some of which were like by multi-millionaires, right? Like there's this eye doctor called whatever, he's some Jewish eye doctor, and he's got like this huge like 5-story building. That's where he works in, right? Mm-hmm. His house is like a miniature Australian opera house.
Jesus.
It's like imagine like a huge window.
You mean specifically the Sydney Opera House, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of that because it's his in the living room. Imagine a big window. Then imagine 3 layers of big window that makes this incredible like transom. That's just his living room.
What is a transom?
A transom is like a window above a window, I guess. I don't know. It was a term that me and my dad would use when cleaning windows. But yeah, huge house by a little artificial lake. Would take like 2 days to clean it with like 4 people on staff. Although most of the time we would only clean half the windows at a time, so it would only take 1 day. But yeah, just extravagant place. But getting from one place to another, very easy. Like everything felt connected, you know, really close. Everything felt tight. Everything felt open. It didn't feel like you could just like wander off into a... I feel like this house is as labyrinthine as that house is. Just because we have this room right here, which is so far separated from everything else in the house.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I'm into. The fact that this room is so far away from the house is more interesting to me than pretty much anything in that house.
Why did that...
Silverstein is his name, by the way. If you're ever in the Kansas City area and someone just gouged your eye out, go to like put the eye on ice and go to Silverstein. Yeah.
Fuck.
And that's what I want from a house.
Why the...
I want a maze. I want a labyrinth. That's all I want in life, man.
I'm with you. You know about the, what's it called? The Winchester... What's the damn gun?
Yeah. Like some sort of like house that was made by like one guy by himself or something, and he just keeps adding rooms.
No, it was the wife, because it was the Winchester rifle, like was like invented by this guy who, you know, of course became extremely rich from inventing that, and his wife like lost her mind.
I see.
And just was like, she basically thought that she needed like her house to protect her from evil spirits and shit.
Sweet.
So she just like had them keep constantly building new shit onto the house, but a lot of it was just like doors that literally don't go anywhere, or like, you know, just like random hallways and stuff that don't make any sense.
I've seen pictures of what I believe you are talking about. It's like just like all these floors and just like things, and it just seems so like disjointed and incoherent, but like cool and awesome.
Yeah, and I theorize that one scene from that Gundam show was meant to be in a place like that, where the guy just runs up the flight of stairs into a wall for some reason.
Yeah.
Which is the fucking weirdest shit I've ever seen in a show.
Yes.
I think that might have been some kind of Winchester house that he was in. We're almost done with this fucking...
Like, that was my only goal.
Oh, God, there's even more.
When getting into Minecraft, was like, that's what I wanted to do, was to make a labyrinth. But I just never put in the hours.
Takes a long time to build something really cool in Minecraft.
If I were, doing full-time video game analysis, a big frontier of analysis that I would have definitely gotten into is the nature of interesting labyrinthine level design. Because there are lots of games out there that have lots of rooms, but don't feel labyrinthine. And really there's no games that really satisfy me in that regard. Like, the Souls games do it much better than normal. Luigi's Mansion definitely does it pretty well, but it's all several increments past lower than what I want. Like, I really want stuff that really goes ham on it.
What about the Metroid games?
Yeah, those two are just like, I do like the level design, but it's so much less than what I really am looking for. I don't even know exactly what I'm looking for. That's why I need to do the analysis, is to figure it out.
Right.
But yeah, like, I feel like a lot of it can be described in like interesting ways to relate two locations to one another, right?
Yeah.
Like, the idea that there's, let's say you go in one room, and then later on, you're up on like a balcony at the top of that room, and you're like on this little balcony that you didn't even see when you were at the bottom of the room. Yeah. But now you look down on everything that was below you. Which I know that like Dark Souls 3 has stuff like that. I know all the Souls games have stuff like that.
Right.
But there was a part in the Souls 3 playthrough where you were suddenly up on like this.
Fuck!
Oh, you startled me. I love the way that the black blinds come in. Yeah. Where they fold all the way, then they bounce a little bit. That's a nice dynamic animation that I like. Loud.
When did we start this episode?
2:30. So now it's been 30 minutes. It's been 20 minutes, so...
Yeah, that's about it. Alright, that's it for this episode of Digibro.
See you around.
Davoo plays games. I think we can stop now.
Okay.